Hey everybody who might be hearing our voices over the internet this afternoon. We are getting set up and ready for Ask an Expert with Jeff Reed of TCI Automotive. And in the meantime, we ask that you go ahead and share this video out to everyone on your feed. We're doing that on this end while we also research some NHRA rules to be able to answer your question that we got. So hang out with us for a little bit. Don't mind the noise in the background, and we'll be with y'all in just a minute. 2016. I have to have a membership login to get into it. Rule book amendments.
I mean, it's going to be, first he's got to figure out what kind of RPM his motor can turn.
Right. And if that's going to be.
And then, that's going to figure out the gear and the converter. Once he gets that figured out, he can send me that information.
Yeah.
What he's going to start with, if it's 373 or 411 gears.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, hopefully he'll be on. Doug Mitchell, if you're seeing this, make sure that you get onto the feed with us because we've got some questions about this factory stock showdown class. We're missing some of the qualifications, I guess, for that class. We're not sure. It is apparently a 9-inch tire class because that's what you've mentioned. But other than that, there's a lot of variables there. So we want to see if you know what those are. And hopefully we can get that question answered for you. Oh, hair on the mic and on the logo. Got it all now. We're good. And again, we'll be starting up here in just a couple of minutes, but for anybody who's already on the feed, go ahead and share this video if you're feeling so inclined, and that would help us get our reach up and make sure we can answer as many questions for as many people as possible. We are going to be speaking with Jeff Reed of TCI Automotive today and answering a whole bunch of drivetrain questions. So a little bit out of the norm of what we've been doing and a whole new batch of information. And Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and share this video if you want to do the same on your feed so that everyone knows how important you are. Oh, all right. Then you're excused. Let's see.
I've got Instagram, but I've got a Facebook deal, but I get on when I want to and get off when I want to.
Yeah.
Too much to keep up with.
That.
More drink.
What? Okay. Are we ready? Is it time? Hi guys, welcome back to CPG's Warehouse. I'm Kirsten Stone, and joining me today for CPG's Ask an Expert is Mr. Jeff Reed of TCI Automotive. A big round of applause for Mr. Jeff. And we are going to go ahead and jump right into it. Actually, just before we do that, I made mention that I've just shared this out onto my own feed. If you're tuned in right now, go ahead and do the same and help us reach as many people as we can with all of this good drivetrain information. And for people that do share it, we'll be giving out a TCI banner that we've got hidden in the corner of this room over there. So go ahead and share, and we will be handing out some fun rewards for that. So Jeff, tell me a little bit about yourself and your racing background before we actually get into TCI.
Racing background. I started probably drag racing in the middle 80s, 84, 85. Had it was a pickup at the time, 67 Chevrolet pickup. Actually, it was pretty fast for back then.
Yeah.
it run 840s, 850s, 8th mile, and I drove it everywhere.
Yeah,
And,
that's pretty
I mean,
good for
that's
a
fast
drivable
now.
car.
And probably, you know, working at TCI since then, being around it, I worked with guys, and I was always around it and involved in it. And 2002 maybe, purchased a Mustang and started the bolt-ons, the Zex kit, and the gears and the converter, and, you know, did that for a while. In 2008, finally decided to make a race car out of it. And it's a 93 Mustang, small block Ford, turbocharged deal that, you know, I've raced some NMRA stuff with it and some of the outlaw races, but mainly now I do the local stuff.
Okay.
And,
Gotcha. I had a question from one Mr. Kevin Winstead, who said, "Is it true that you have the slowest white fox body with a Ford in it in the country?"
You tell Kevin Winstead I can outrun him in reverse.
I will. I'll share the good word with him. And then tell me a little bit about how you got in with TCI and how that. I mean, how did you get to where you are now?
My 11th grade year, summer year, I was offered a summer job at TCI. I was offered that job through a friend of mine that worked there that I went to the racetrack with, and his name was Sammy Ford, and he was the manager in the transmission department, valve body department. They hired me that summer to tear down valve bodies, clean up valve bodies.
That's a messy job.
Oh yeah, very messy job. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I wore a white T-shirt, and at the end of the day, it wasn't white anymore.
Oh yeah.
So went back to school in August. About December, they called me and said, "Hey, when you get out of school, can you come to work?" Still doing the same thing. In January of 1984, Mr. Bill Taylor called me in the office one day, scared me to death. I mean, I was 17, 18-year-old guy. I didn't know what was going on. And he said, "You want to build transmissions?" I said, "Sure."
And that's got to be a pretty big step up, especially as a 17, 18-year-old kid.
And I mean, it's changed so much since then. I mean, back then, we took our transmissions apart ourselves. We cleaned all the parts up, and you know, we had 5, 6, 7, 8 builders in. Now we still have 7 or 8, 9 builders, but we have people tearing down and cleaning up parts and supplying everybody.
Right.
So I did that probably for 7, 8 years. I was offered the job doing all the repairs, and kind of a step up. So I took that, did that for a couple years, and was offered the manager of the transmission department, and did that for a long time, and really enjoyed it. I mean, I tell people about TCI and about what I've done with the company. You know, it's pretty impressive to go and work for a place that can produce 60, 70 converters a day and 25, 30 transmissions a day.
Right,
You know,
and
I mean,
like you said, with this small, very hands-on staff.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, back in 2010, I was offered the direct race sales job, which that's basically dealing with racers. You know?
Right.
I go to a lot of races. You know, I still do transmission work myself at the shop. For instance, if I talk to you 90% of the time, you send me the transmission, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And same way with converters. I get the converter, I carry it over to the shop, we cut it open. Me and the converter manager go through it, I'll walk it through step by step and share that information with my customer also.
Right on.
That's about it.
And that's one of the things that we've discussed, at least here in this office, that we just love that when you are here at work, you're around race car people who get it, and you get to talk about race cars, whether it's for work or for a little bit of that side jabber in the office. And then you get to go home and you work on your race cars, and then everybody, there's something about car people, and you know, in dealing with your car people customers, these aren't people ordering paper goods for their office. Everybody's really passionate, excited about what they do.
Yeah.
And so we're lucky in that we get to deal with that every day. So let's go from there into a couple of these tech questions that came in. So we're going to play a fun game called Ask an Expert with Mr. Jeff Reed. If you guys are just joining us, we are answering all kinds of drivetrain questions on behalf of TCI Automotive today. And if you're tuned in, go ahead and share the video. For someone that shares the video, we're going to be giving away a TCI banner. So definitely jump on that and help us get the word out. And to John, he says, thanks for the help on the AOD question. Assuming that was directed at you, Jeff, because I personally didn't answer any overdrive questions. So, John, no problem. Keep submitting the questions, you guys. We're always happy to help via the Facebook pages or tech lines emails that we've got available. So definitely let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Mr. Kevin Vannersdale submitted a question. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. I'm 99% confident I did. I have a 454.5-ton Chevy, still have a lockup, torque converter, and a built 4L60. It seems that the lockup likes to go in and go out rapidly at low speeds and lower vacuum. At first I thought it was hesitation or an engine problem, but then I determined it was actually the lockup rapidly firing. At higher speeds, the lockup seems to engage fine and hold well. This has only recently started happening. Could this be a torque issue, or do you think the ECM is telling it to do this rapid fire lockup thing?
First thing I would check would be have someone check the ECU. Maybe there's a lot of tweaking you can do on there. Maybe turn the duty cycle up on the lockup. And if that doesn't fix it, I would definitely have the converter checked out.
And the other thing, I mean, it says a 454.5-ton Chevy. That leaves, to me, a lot of questions still on the table. We don't know if, a 454 was that truck's 454.
Exactly.
There's a lot of, if there's been wiring changes, a lot of things could be going on there. So
a lot of times when you, if this is aftermarket stuff put in this truck, a lot of times if it's hot rod stuff, the converter, I'm sure, is a stall converter.
Right.
And I would probably have the ECU checked first.
So there's a good starting point, and if that doesn't solve the problem, let us know, and we'd be happy to keep helping you out. Jeff Reed is the man. Love you, Bebop, is what Jeremy Harrison says.
Oh, Lord.
So now we're going to call him Bebop, Jeremy. We appreciate that. Doug Mitchell, we were chit-chatting a little bit about this before we actually went live this afternoon. The factory stock showdown class. We're looking for a little bit more detail on that. I tried to pull rules on it, and I wasn't really finding a ton of information. His question was, how would you select converter and gear ratios to get those very fast cars to hook up on 9-inch tires? So I think we lead with, there's a lot of variables in that question for sure. Yeah. A lot of that's going to depend on exactly what the rules are on factory stock.
His motor, how many RPMs he's going to turn his motor, what gear ratios he's going to run, how tall a tire.
Right.
If we can get that information, pretty simple to spec a converter for that.
Right. And so what exactly, if you had to drop a list of before you call me to spec out a torque converter, this is what I want to know.
First of all, what are you going to do with a car? Is it a race car? Is it a street strip car? Let's just say it's a race car. I want the weight of the car, the rear gear, height of the rear tire, what transmission you're using, what first gear ratio you're using in the transmission. Cam specs, I like to know horsepower and torque numbers, but if I can get the cam spec and what kind of RPM you're going to turn that motor, we're going to start building a converter.
Okay. That's perfect. Perfect. So that's an exact checklist for anybody who's looking to get a torque converter spec'd out. Know that information when you call. We can be as effective as possible with all of that.
There's never too much information. Never.
Yeah, right. So when you're talking about you want to know cam specs, what cam specs specifically? Spell it out for our viewers. What are the important ones when they call you?
Well, the duration at 50.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're looking at, and the lift, the total lift on the cam. That's kind of what we look at.
Perfect. Then Dustin Bales asked, I have a 2000 Silverado that I'm going to be running carbureted LS power on. Any suggestions on the transmission and gauges to keep them operational? Fuel system is also being changed out completely. So we're going to drop the fuel system part of the question because that is way out of the wheelhouse for this table of experts. And we will say the transmission and gauges to keep them operational. I mean, I'm guessing transmission controller.
Well, you know, if he's wanting to go electronic, if he's thinking about 4L60, 4L80, you know, our easy TCU would work great for that. You know, if he's just talking about transmissions and he won't say manual transmission or whatever, you know, something like that would definitely turbo 400 route, 4L80 route.
Okay.
You know.
And as far as gauges, that's all a pickup issue, and we wish you all the best and excellent YouTube searches for your particular make and model, sir. Okay, this one, we'll take it back to basics on this one. This is still a little bit of black magic to me, so I am all ears. How does a torque converter work?
Torque converter. There's basically 4 pieces to a converter.
Okay.
Your front, your turbine, your stator, and your pump. The front, which is what's bolted to your flywheel, and your pump is what's connected to your transmission. And the stator and the turbine is inside it. That's basically what's multiplying torque and making, there you have a torque converter.
So tell me, when I know there's fins inside, how, I mean, can you get a little bit into fins and fluid and how that actually happens?
TCI talk in the shop. This is when we build a converter, you know, when we spec out a race converter, we put I tell my converter guy I want a 250 plus, or I want a 50 negative. What I'm talking about there is the fin angle in the pump.
Okay.
That can go from 100 negative to 350 positive, depending on the application that you're using.
What does it do? You say, I'm imagining 50 negative is going one way. And
Depending, there again, depends on horsepower and torque.
Okay.
You know, a very, very high horsepower car is going to have a more positive pump angle to make the converter lock up a lot more. You know, if it's a 300 horsepower car, it may be leaning back toward the negative side of it.
Okay.
You know, just depending on what stall you want. And stators. I mean, there's, you know, we do a lot of handmade stators. Our street converter line, we use a 245 millimeter core for that. There's probably 6, 7, 8 different stator designs, plus there's 2 handmade stators that we use in our street converters too. So, and along with that and along with the pumps.
Right. And so that's just a matter of what you're doing and how fast you're going.
Yes. Match it up to your combination.
Gotcha. This one is weirdly specific. This guy asked, he's got a TH400 with a Transbrake and reverse isn't acting right. Do you have any insight on that?
Could be a couple things. One, and I tell everybody this, I get a lot of calls about stuff like that. One, check your linkage.
Okay.
Don't just check it in park. I tell everybody you don't race in park.
Right.
You know, check it reverse, neutral, first, second, third. Another thing on a Turbo 400, reverse is part of Transbrake. What a Transbrake does is locks reverse and locks forward clutch together. On a Turbo 400, it is very, very important to check your band pin length in your reverse servo. There is a tool to do this, which we use on every one of our transmissions, but there's also some shade tree ways of doing it.
Okay.
Best thing I can tell you, hey, give me a call at work. My email is jreed@tciauto.com, and I will try to explain that further to you.
Troubleshoot it and walk through it with
Yep.
you. So what does it mean if your converter is too loose or too tight?
Too tight means that it's probably not stalling where the customer wants it. In other words, if it's too tight, just say that you've got a street rod with a pretty mild camshaft in it, and you put it in gear and the car tries to go dead.
Okay.
Converter's too tight.
Gotcha.
Just say that you got the same car and you put it down in gear and the car seems like it goes to 5,000 before it wants to move.
Before it moves.
Too loose.
Yeah.
You know, same scenario. You know, and then again, you know, on the drag strip, if converter's too loose, a guy don't want to turn his engine over 7,000 RPMs.
Right. If you're not engaging until 5, that's
well, that and in a quarter-mile racing, if you're racing this car a quarter mile and you only want to shift this thing at 7,000, but at 800 feet you're at 7,000 RPM, torque converter's too loose.
Right.
Or your transmission's got problems with it.
But either way, we can help with that. Again, we can be reached at tciauto.com. For anybody who might just now be tuning in, we're here with Mr. Jeff Reed of TCI Automotive, answering all of your drivetrain questions, all those burning questions you might have about transmissions and torque converters and shifters and. So make sure that you go ahead and throw those in the comments, and we will answer those questions for you. And when we talked about loose converters and tight converters, this one's a pretty basic question also. What is the difference between a 200 R4 and a 700 R4?
Night and day. No, they basically work the same as far as what gears own and drive, overdrive, stuff like that. The 204R originally come out, I think, in a Cadillac, maybe. One reason it's so popular is that is the Buick Grand National transmission. There's a lot of guys making.
There's a cult following all its own.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys making a lot of power with that transmission. We do a lot of 204Rs. I think ours is rated up to like 650 horsepower. And there's a lot of the places out there that's really doing a lot more with them. 700 R4. 700 R4 is a 2-to-1 stronger than a 204R, in my opinion. Yeah. So
the 200 R4 is a stout transmission, way ahead of its time, but now we're in the 700 R4's time. Yeah. So that's a solid answer, but totally workable in either situation, and
depending on depending on what you want.
Right, and the power levels. I mean, if you're a Grand National was from 1987, so in 1987, the power levels they were operating at, they might have been maxing those things out then, but now that's sort of the entry-level guy. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. We've got something for every power level. Hey, you guys, we're noticing a ton of background noise coming out of the warehouse, and if you're picking that up on your end, we're really sorry about that. Bear with us. Remember, we are a machine shop before we are anything else. So we are grinding products out in the warehouse and making the best stuff we can. The downside is our Facebook videos are sometimes a little noisy. So back with Mr. Jeff Reed, more questions about torque converters. So how is the torque converter going to affect the overall performance of your engine package?
There again, if you've built your motor and you've upgraded the camshaft, you've upped the compression on the motor, different intake, different injectors, carburetor, whatever you're using, if you don't have the right converter in there, it's really, you're going to be upset probably your engine builder if you go and put a stock converter behind a motor making 500 horsepower.
Right, it's just not going to run what it could.
Right, it's not going to be happy.
So I feel like the engine builder is building you this killer package. You're talking 500 horsepower. Today's day and age, it could be 900 horsepower.
Exactly.
If they're running the wrong torque converter, they're not going to be putting any of that power down, so it just doesn't matter.
It's going to blow right through the converter.
So
if the converter's not built for that combination, and heavy duty enough to withstand that kind of power,
right,
it's going to tear up a lot of stuff.
Right. Well, it's going to tear up a lot of stuff, and what good is 900 horsepower if you don't get to drive any of it? So if you have any questions and you're in the process of building a race car or even just a really fun street car, feel free to give us a call at TCI Auto. We can get you a converter spec'd out that's just perfect for what you're doing and get you on the road driving all of that horsepower. On a freshly rebuilt transmission, to a unit up to maybe with a few thousand miles on it, what is the preferred maintenance schedule, and what should be checked when you're doing maintenance?
What I tell everybody, if you get a transmission from TCI, 500 miles, change the fluid. Pull the pan, change the filter, change the gasket. The reason I tell everybody 500 miles is because this transmission's got new bushings, new clutches, everything. There's nothing in that transmission like a bushing or seal or something that's
Right.
used. That's during the braking period, you're going to get some little gold-looking,
It's just like a motor. Everything wears
just like an
in
engine,
and-
just like an engine. You know, after that, you know, if it's a street car, you drive this thing a lot, I recommend changing the fluid every 2,000 or 3,000 miles.
Okay.
You know, if you go to the racetrack and beat up on it one weekend and you get it really, really hot, hey, spend $40-50 and change
Yeah.
the fluid in, you know.
Yeah, 40,
'Cause
50 bucks is
I
a
mean,
huge savings. Over.
I've been doing this a long time. I've seen so many people get their transmission hot, especially a race car, and if they would have just dropped the pan, changed the fluid in it, and went on to the next round, it would have been fine. But you know, after that fluid is broke down, it's done. You know, it's
And
done.
once it crosses that heat threshold, that's it for that
done.
fluid.
It's not coming back.
Okay. So
It
that
ain't like
is-
water; it don't cool off.
Yeah. So make note of that. If you guys are out there using and abusing your motors and transmissions at the track, and maybe by the time that you're done hot lapping the heck out of your truck at the end of the track day, you notice it's maybe not shifting how it should. Maybe
It's
it's
got
time
this
to get
funny
home.
smell
and-
coming, you know.
Funny smells are always a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
So definitely be changing that fluid regularly. And this question says, what is stall speed? But there's stall speed and there's what flash stall and there's all of these
Stall is
numbers
stall.
that people throw around.
Stall
so,
is stall. You know, we was talking about this at work the other day, and the same question got asked to me. Stall is basically your torque converter slipping until it gets to the point of putting power to the rear tires.
Right.
You know, back to that cam deal a while ago. If you've got a pretty mild cam, you put the car in gear and it goes dead, the converter's too tight. You
Right.
don't have enough stall. If it's got the right converter in it, when you put it in gear, it's basically letting everything stall right there, you know, to keep the car idling. You know?
Right.
And, you know, let's touch on this while we're on stall. You have a lot of people call and they think whatever you can hold your foot brake to
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
is your stall. Not happening. That's not true. Basically, the way to measure your stall is, one, you probably need to be on a racetrack. You don't need to be doing this, you know, out here on the street.
This is
So,
the don't try
you know,
this at home
I mean,
message.
you know, if you're at a racetrack, the track's going to be sticky. Your tires are hopefully the tires that you need. When you leave the starting line, that initial, when you go to the floor, and whatever that RPM sweeps up to and stops, that's stall speed. Or if you have a Transbrake on your car, be sure that cars are not parked in front of you, kids are not walking in front of you. Take the chip out of it, grab the Transbrake, and go to the floor. That's what your stall is. Now, turbo cars, blower cars, that necessarily is not true. That is more or less in a naturally aspirated
Right.
way to do that.
Because if you're building boost in
If you're
that
building
time, that's a
boost and
different
stuff,
monster.
that can change stall tremendously.
Okay.
You know?
So there was a couple of other questions that popped up. Damian King, thanks for joining us again, Damian. We appreciate you. Is there a massive setup difference between preparing a torque converter with automatic transmission for tuning the power delivery on a turbocharged car versus a blower versus a nitrous car, all at the Pro Mod competition level? Thanks from the Caribbean.
You know, all three of them combinations he talked about, all three of them make really good horsepower. Whether
Right.
if it's nitrous, if it's supercharged, if it's turbocharged. Yes, I mean, it takes a lot to set that up. I mean, you've got billet fronts that
Just stronger.
it's a lot stronger than your normal front. You got anti-ballooning plates on the turbine side of the converter. You got anti-ballooning plates on the front of the converter.
Right. Now, can you
then-
explain what that is? That's a question that we've got in here, is about anti-ballooning plates. So,
Anti-ballooning plate is basically a round plate that is welded inside the converter to keep the internal parts from flexing.
oh, okay.
That's basically what it is.
I gotcha.
That's basically what it is. You know, back to his questions about the three different kinds of nitrous, supercharged, and turbos. Stator combinations, completely different from every one of them.
Right.
The nitrous car may make 1,600 horsepower or 2,600 horsepower. The supercharged car may make 2,600 horsepower, and the turbocharger may make. They're all the same power, but they're three different complete animals.
Right. So they're all bringing in power at different, specifically different RPM levels right off the bat. With the supercharger car, obviously, right off the line, you're pretty much in the boost. As soon as you can get your pulleys turning, you're in the boost.
And that, theoretically, some people may agree, disagree, depending on who your tuner is and who does your stuff. But supercharged cars, blower cars, I'm going to use as a blower car, pro-charge type stuff, tend to want a little bit looser converter than a turbo car.
Okay.
Nitrous cars seem to want to be more closer to the turbo guys. They want them tight. Because,
really?
Yes.
So that's almost counterintuitive to me, because with nitrous you have the option of, it's not boost, but that extra power right off the line.
Nitrous is instant torque is all it is.
Right.
And it takes a 3,000 stall converter to a 5,000 stall converter just like that.
And turbocharging is a similar fact. See, that's so
Pretty
strange
similar.
to me, because it's instantaneous
torque.
power versus a build-in power. So it's a different experience right off the line that I guess needs similar parts.
Well, nowadays with the turbo guys, and I'm a turbo guy myself.
Right.
There's so much, far as the controller they can make that thing make 8 pounds on the start line, or they can make 28 pounds.
Right.
And
if you're running any form of launch control, you're there by the time that you launch.
And all they want is a converter to flash to 3,000 or something, and then
they're in it.
They're ready to go. Yeah.
So
that's a whole nother show.
That's a different show. Tune in later for turbocharging and your torque converter with Jeff Reed. What do you believe is the biggest development in the past 10 years in transmission and torque converter engineering?
Transmissions, I gotta say, gear ratios.
Okay.
I mean, back in the day, there was a 182. This is Powerglide. There was a 182 gear set. There was a 176. I remember the first aftermarket gear set that was probably built at TCI, and it was, when I was there, it was a 196 first gear ratio. That used to be the hot ticket back in the day for the super gas, super comp type cars. Torque converter technology. It's the newer cores that people are using now.
Okay.
I mean, it's not any longer that that you got the 9.5 Nissan. I mean,
right.
That 9.5 Nissan core is still a very popular core. We use it a lot, but there's some newer Nissan type cores
right.
out there it's definitely core technology. I mean, it's definitely it.
This is an aside and an uneducated transmission question direct from me, because I was just sitting here thinking about this as you're talking about how automatic transmissions have developed in the last few years. It seems like all of the newest cars that are on the market, everything is running like 8 and 10 and 12 speed transmissions. What does that do, or does that have any trickle down into race cars? You think at some point that will make a difference?
I think it will. I really do. I mean, when, I can't tell you.
Right.
But, now you can go buy a car off the car lot with a flip a switch and it's a manual transmission.
Right.
That's stuff that we're doing
right.
with stuff that was built 35, 40 years ago.
Right.
The electronics and stuff, you never know.
Well, it seems
I hope I see that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just sitting here, and like I said, I don't know transmissions, so this is a little bit of a struggle for me. But I'm thinking, you've got right now, however many gears you've got, you're in the power band, and then you're not at some point. But it seems like the more gears you throw in there, you just give yourself more and more chances to be in
You're
your power
seeing
band.
a lot more of the drag race crowd now. I mean, 15 years ago, everybody run Powerglides.
Right.
Now the Turbo 400 market is huge because we and other companies are making 2-speed versions out of these things. and basically we're using the second gear ratio as first gear.
Right.
And and then back to the question before about the transmissions. I said something about the gear sets.
Right.
I mean, now you can buy a 3-speed with a 186 first gear, 131 second, 1-to-1, or you can buy a 297 first gear, 186 second.
We're calling it Powerglide, right? The direct drive setup.
Yeah, there's Powerglides. There's so many. It's a lot of people doing a lot with Turbo 400s. I mean, our Turbo 400 race business has been really good this year.
Yeah, I was actually talking with Kevin Winstead. Obviously, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are familiar with Kevin, who works both in the CAM side and the TCI side as well. And I was kind of getting a little bit of an education on what a Powerglide was. I mean, that was something that I was totally unexposed to.
I think that's just a name somebody come up with.
Yeah.
And it stuck. I mean,
but it's a 2-speed Turbo 400 with direct drive.
Yep.
And I think it's a great answer to that question. That was one that we were discussing earlier today, so I'm on board with that. Now, you touched on this a little bit about how Transbrakes work. You want to give us a better breakdown on that?
It's pretty simple. Powerglide. That's the easiest one to explain. They all work the same, but a Powerglide is where the Transbrake transmission come from. Mm-hmm. Basically, the valve body is machined to make it a manual transmission. Then everybody that's ever seen a racing transmission, there's a solenoid on the back, on the very back where the modulator goes, and that is a Transbrake solenoid. What happens when the Transbrake solenoid is applied? You're in first gear, so low gear is already on. When you mash that button in low gear, that applies reverse clutch. So basically, the transmission's in reverse and low gear at the same time.
At equal rates, and so it's just sitting still.
It's just sitting still. That's a Transbrake. And it works the same way in a Turbo 400. It works the same way in a Turbo 350. Chrysler stuff, Ford stuff, it's all the same.
So when somebody actually, mashes the button, and at that moment, that drops off the reverse side of that, exactly. And then you launch forward.
There is a big dump. There's a big dump hole in a Turbo 400 in a Powerglide that dumps that fluid out just like instant.
Right.
And that's the reason you see, like, we offer a Pro brake and we offer a regular brake in the Powerglide. The regular brake, it don't release as fast. And when you put it in reverse, you don't have to activate the solenoid to back up. It's in reverse.
Right.
But on the Pro brakes, they leave faster. They react faster. Plus, that's another safety feature too. I mean,
right.
When you got it in reverse, you got to mash the button. I like that.
So what is the difference? I mean, why would someone choose the Pro versus the standard? My thought is the Pro is just more abusive.
The people that I talk to, the Pro brake, if they've got a Pro brake and they want to go to the regular Transbrake, it's because they red light a lot.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of difference in it.
So, and that's something that I guess at some point as a drag racer, there's only so much that you can compensate for, and the rest of it's just your natural reaction time.
Just to say that you race on a 400 heads up tree, and you're going 390 red.
Yeah.
If you change and put our slower valve body in there, you're going to go 417, 420 red. Green. Sorry.
Yeah. So
it's a little bit slower. It reacts a little bit slower.
Okay. So, but it's not necessarily I was worried about wear and tear on the rest of the setup. But if you've got a Transbrake, you're racing anyway. It's not.
It's beating parts up every time.
Yeah, every time that you launch. So, why is a torque converter an important performance upgrade when you're installing a turbo system? We sort of touched on that a little bit, but is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
When you're installing a turbo system on a car, you're adding horsepower, you're adding torque, you're adding more heat. It's a good idea to, if you've got a new Mustang or if you've got a new Camaro, it's a good idea to get in touch with TCI and let us upgrade that, because one, it's it's going to perform better at the racetrack, on the street.
Right.
You know, and because that, you know, when they put the turbo kit on the car, they're adding at least 200 horsepower, sometimes 500 horsepower.
Yeah.
You know, your stock converter is not made to do that.
Well, not to mention, a guy taking a turbo car to the track for the first time, say he's always run an aspirated setup on his Fox Body Mustang and he throws some turbos on there and heads to the track. Launching that car is going to be a totally different experience anyway. You might as well be getting everything you can off the line because that's going to be a whole new experience.
Yes, it is.
We talked about the current trends in racing transmissions, the Turboglide and Powerglide. My note, as I told you earlier, about your slow white Ford-powered Fox body from Kevin. When you're adjusting your shifter cable, we haven't had any shifter questions. This is a good one. When you're adjusting your shifter cable, how do you suggest they do it and why?
Very important question. Very important. I've seen more transmissions burn up. Be at the racetrack, guys are scrambling, they broke a transmission in between round, they're trying to get it back in. They go back out there, make one pass, and it's burned up again. Believe it or not, pan brackets get bent. The little swivel thing on the end of the cable gets turned while you're doing all that. This is how I tell everybody to adjust a shifter. Start in drive.
Okay.
Don't start in park. Don't start in low gear. Start in drive. You know, make sure your pan bracket's good and straight. It ain't bent, because it makes a lot of difference. Get it set for drive to where the little swivel goes in and out of the hole in the shifter. Then go to, if it's a 3-speed, go to second gear. Check it. Go to low gear. Check it. Then, if all of them are good, back up. Let's go to neutral. Then we go to reverse. I had this question so many times. My shifter's adjusted right, but it won't stay in park.
And then it's not adjusted right.
Well, I'm concerned with forward gears. That's what we're racing down the track. Normally, if you ain't got a park, there's other problems somewhere else. It's the wrong cable. The shifter, something's not right about the shifter. You know, you don't see that a lot, but you do. I get teased about that a lot, because normally, if I'm at the racetrack and somebody, you know, how everybody walks up to the cars and leans on the car, my car's usually rolling and it goes.
Yeah.
I don't have no park. Hey man, you ain't got a park. I said, I don't race in park.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We had, there's a little note about gate plates. We touched on that. How does a Circle-matic valve body work?
TCI Circle-matic valve body. Basically, in low gear, it's got a jet that's bleeding off pressure. Put it down in first gear, you kind of give it gas, and it's slipping because it's spitting pressure out of the valve body. That's enough to get you going onto the track, and then you cram it in high gear, and everything's 1-to-1 then. But I hope that answered the question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's basically going to be direct drive for
It's a direct drive.
Yeah.
We'll touch a little bit on that, because that's probably, over the past 30-something years that I've been doing this, that's the third or fourth version of a Circle-matic we used to have. We used to have the ball valve deal that you tapped into the pump on the front of your transmission, and the driver had to reach in and, you know, turn a ball valve on. Done away with that, not sure when. We went to a clutch setup. We actually, not too long ago, we still offered this. I don't think we do anymore. But we actually sold a clutch pedal that activated a lever on the side of the transmission that would neutralize the valve body when you mash that clutch. And that's the latest version that I was just talking about, with the jets and stuff made in it.
I getcha. Okay.
Works pretty good.
Here's another one we sort of briefly touched on earlier about ballooning plates, but a more general version of that. When should I be using anti-ballooning plates in my converter?
I'm going to say horsepower range, 350 to 400. You need to start putting, you know. I know.
And if you're touching boost, it's like
we have on our street series, our Saturday night special, the Sizzler converter Then we have the breakaway, starting with our breakaway converter to the Ultimate Street Fighter.
I get you.
They all have balloon in place.
Gotcha. So more power, the more you want to keep everything from flexing inside the converter. Cam and converter matching, and why is that important? I think at this point we've pretty well covered that.
What was that? I missed that.
Matching cams and converters. Why is it important?
Well, I mean, it's very important for us to know the cam information. And I know there's a lot of guys that don't like to give that out, but we got to get something to get the converter close,
This one is a super general question. Do I need lockup?
For?
Well, I know that it's a question that our guys see a lot when it's in reference to tow rigs and when they can or can't use lockup. So if you could speak to that, that would be good. And then, I mean, what do you recommend it for the average guy?
Lockup's a good thing, especially for gas mileage. Normally, what you see in an overdrive setup from when you're in fourth gear overdrive, cruising down the road, when a lockup's applied, you normally see about a 200 RPM drop.
Okay. So that's a huge gas savings.
Oh yeah. I mean, nowadays, whatever we can do to save gas. Some people like lockup, some people don't. I've talked to a lot of people that says, "Hey, can you build this 700 R4 transmission without lockup?" Sure. Just make sure if you do away with a lockup in your 700 R4, 204R, that the converter is set up for a non-lockup setup.
Because it's always going to be slipping.
Yeah, because let me tell you why that. Once that transmission, the 204R, the 700R4, 4L60E, once they go in fourth gear, the cooler flow kind of slows down inside the transmission. But once that lockup valve in the pump is applied, it opens that back up and you get a lot more oil in. We do a lot of special tricks to non-lockup transmissions to make them oil better. To say that you ordered a non-lockup transmission from us and you had your own converter.
Right.
If it's a lockup, if you put that converter in this transmission that's set up for non-lockup, as soon as you crank it up and put it in gear, it's going to go dead because that's just the way our
they're not
our
built
transmissions
for it.
are built like that. We back to the lockup deal. If you've got a street rod type vehicle, I recommend the universal lockup where you can control that. It works two ways, either with vacuum or off of a 12-volt switch. I recommend to run that because that way you can control at what vacuum. It's got a little adjuster on the side. You can control when it comes on and goes off. That way it ain't in and out, in and out, in and out.
Right. Because that's hard on everything.
And in towing, I think you brought up about the towing with lockup. Overdrive and lockup when you're towing, you got to use common sense.
Yeah.
You don't want that transmission steadily going in and going out of gear.
Right.
It's going to tear something up.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're in the mountains and you're climbing a bunch of hills and going up and down hill, take it out of overdrive. Converter's still going to lock up in third gear. And then once you get out of the mountains and back on the flat surface, bump it up in drive.
So it's not bad as long as you're not going to be a bunch of load on and off and on and off.
On and off is never no good.
Okay. Alrighty, and let's see if I've got anything else here. Billy made the point, I think Kirsten is asking if the fluid and pressure are affected by the fin angle and what is the difference between one converter and another as far as performance. I feel confident at this point that we've pretty well covered the differences between converters, but let's talk about fin angle and how that correlates to pressure. What does that part of converter assembly look like?
Let's just say that the converter is laying here on the table. We're talking about fin angle. Mm-hmm. I touched on a little bit a while ago about the negative fin angle and the positive fin angle. Mm-hmm. Just say we're looking at the converter and it's cut open and it's sitting down here. The positive fin angle is going to be to the right in the pump. The negative fin angle is going to be to the left. If it's a neutral, it's going to be straight up and down.
Right.
As far as pressure, converter pressures, that can vary depending on the setup. A lot of drag racers now monitor converter pressure.
We monitor more of everything.
They monitor it, then they take the line off and they put a jet in there and drill a hole in it, half the size it's supposed to be, but they don't ever tell you this stuff while they send their converter.
Right.
But it's a question like this, we could go on all day about it, and I really enjoy talking about it. But hey, call me at work. Let me try to get more detailed, and because when you start talking about torque converters, man, I mean, we do 50 different stator versions.
Right.
There's 25 different fin angles that we do in the tops, and
Right. So just to follow up further on that, we talked about a neutral fin angle being straight up and down, which basically means it's seeing as little drag as it's going to possibly see through that fluid. And then as the fin angle changes and it picks up drag, then you're going to see more pressure.
More lockup.
Okay.
More aggressive. In other words, the more positive is the more aggressive the converter is going to couple.
Like I mentioned, I alluded briefly to converters being black magic to me earlier, because it's like, what it looks like, and you know how to install it on the back of a motor, and besides that, I don't know, it just does what it's supposed to do, and if you call the right people and they give you the right part, it works. How is a different monster.
I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I love going to the converter shop and hang out over, because I learn, and I need to learn a lot more about it. And I mean, it's really fascinating what you can learn about it.
And the advancements that have come from it. I had a conversation with Will, who was telling me that the old school method basically of adjusting or rebuilding a converter was manually bending fins versus now, like you mentioned, it's just a whole new plate you put in there, and it's a different monster. Yeah. So technology's really come a long way on a part that sometimes you don't see that.
You said manually bending the fins. We manually bend them, but before, everybody had these calipers mounted to their eyes or mics in their eyes, and that's a 150 plus, and and Joe over here would build the next one, and that's a 150 plus, or
right.
No, guys, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to set you up a gauge. And I mean, every torque converter that we do, I mean, especially the race stuff. Now, a lot of the street stuff, the fins are already bent, and because we use different tops. But on a drag race application, we have a tool made that goes in, it bends that, then they take this little instrument and check it, and every one of them. I'm 100% sure that everybody checks it 100%.
Right.
I mean, that's the only way to do it.
Right. Because technology, again, has just come so far. Yeah. Guys, we are here with Jeff Reed of TCI Automotive answering all of your drivetrain questions. We're getting pretty close to wrapping up, but if any of you have any questions hanging out there on the internet, please let us know. We'd be happy to get those answered for you. And in the meantime, is there anything else that you feel like are really the big missing pieces? We didn't really talk a ton about shifters. So one of the questions I was asked about presenting earlier today was the gate plates. Like one of the things that kind of amazed me is that a shifter on its own, independent of the gate plates that you use, I mean, you can pretty well install that on a wide range of transmissions, and that was something that shocked me, that with a gate plate change you can do a lot.
and with the gate plate change, and also with the right pan bracket and lever. Since we're talking about shifters, one of the very common problems I see is Powerglide transmissions. Let's go back to them, or Turbo 400 transmissions. Just about everybody in the industry uses the same lever, and it's usually got 3 holes in it.
Right.
And they put that cable in whatever hole that fits them best. A lot of times that's not good. If you get on our website and pull up, our shift lever section, it tells you exactly if you've got a B&M shifter, if you've got a ATI shifter, if you've got whatever it is, a Hurst quarter stick, it tells you what hole to use for that.
Right.
And you get a lot of stuff that gets burned up because it's not in the right position.
Right on. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up today. We appreciate all of you joining us for CPG's Ask an Expert with Mr. Jeff Reed. If there's any more questions that we can answer for you, please throw them in the comments, leave us a note, so even send us a PM, and we'd be happy to work with Jeff to get those answered up for you. Again, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. There will always be more CPG Ask an Expert coming down the line, and we look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Have a good weekend.